Hello everyone, I'm Judith Wilson and thank you for turning up in the group to see this live where I am going to go through virtual training, the 12 steps to becoming masterful. Hello to everyone who is live. Thank you for being on this live with me, and please do ask your questions, and if you find it's useful for others, share with others and get them to join our group as well, because topics like this and training like this is so pertinent for right now. And hello to those of you who are replay guests and watching this, then hi, thank you for taking the time to get this useful information. And I say thank you because you are saving yourself in that you're going to look really good when you do virtual training, but you're also saving your audiences from having to put up with some craziness out there, which is what I'm seeing when people aren't coming across as professional. They aren't thinking about how to do virtual training, and they're making the big mistake of thinking, oh, it can't be any different to live training. It is different. There are key things that you need to get right in order to be masterful. So in this session today, I am going to save you from looking like a silly goose. Absolutely. That's one of my key missions today, is so that when you run a virtual training session, you don't look like a silly goose, which is a big plus. But even more important than that, of course, is that you come across as totally professional. And I'm a big advocate of virtual training being the same price as live training, because it's your expertise and your time when you are delivering the program. And so in order to do that, you've got to be professional. If you guys are amazing when you're in front of a group, you love it and you love speaking to people, we need to make sure that that's transferring. And there's some key things about being virtual that you need to do. So here we go, let's get straight into it. 12 steps of what you need to do. Number one, engineer your background. And I say that because it's really important what they're going to see behind you, and it needs to be appropriate. So if we look here at what I've got behind me, you can see there's a couple of my books, Training Works, Better People, Better Bottom Line, and my presentation skills book, The Inside Secrets of Powerful Presenters. The one that's missing there, I've just realized, is the Millionaire Maker. So Become a Millionaire Working Just 2 days a week, which is a pretty cool book. And you can see my magazine, and I've got a certificate there. If you had a degree or qualifications or anything like that, you would want to put it up there, and a couple of folders and files. Now, for a home office, it's fine to have a couple of pictures of loved ones, make you human. If you are a mum or a dad or something like that, then it's okay to have some of that. But you need to think of what the background looks like, and it shows your credibility. So you look more professional if you have got things that show you know what you're doing. And the more you get into this industry and do, the more you will have things like certificates and qualifications and things to show that you really know your stuff. But I do want you to think about it, because often people say, oh, I'll just go live, and they haven't given any thought to what's happening behind them. And it could be far too busy. Like I know in Zoom, there's an opportunity for you to have a video running behind you. And I really wouldn't advocate that, because it's too busy. You're giving your people so much to look at, what's happening behind you, and it might be a live scene or anything like that. You want the focus and the attention to be on the training that you are doing. On the note of what you are looking in and your background, think about what you are wearing as well. For virtual training, really good idea to wear solid colors rather than, pixelated, lots of small lines, lots of small patterns, black and white stripes. All of that tends to go a bit funny because, it's the digital. Whereas if you've got solid blue or solid, it can be a light color, can be a bright color, whatever you like. But I tend to find the solid colors tend to be better than a lot of crazy activity. Okay, so that was number one, engineer your background. Think about your background. Have you got enough lighting as well? Is it going to look good? Give this thought before just going, oh, I'll spontaneously go live. Okay, now your background might be appropriate if you aren't doing something that's corporate and professional. If you're doing something that's, I help mums in crisis doing something or other when their kids are driving them mad, anything like that, then of course you might have a room full of busy kids and people throwing stuff on couches and whatever, but that's not what we're going for. What I'm teaching you here is virtual training in a professional sense, and we need to, of course, come across as professional. Number 2, send out skeleton handouts 24 hours before the session. So this is for paid training where you are being trained to deliver, and it could be via live stream or it could be virtual. And I say skeleton because they shouldn't be complete notes. You shouldn't write full paragraphs of everything that you're going to talk about and teach them. It should be skeleton that you're saying, I've got 12 keys that I'm going to tell you, number 1, and what the thing is. So for example, for this one, it's send out skeleton handouts 24 hours before. And then I do lines underneath it. And as they're going through it, they can scribble down into what they're writing. They can scribble down. So that's good. So send out skeleton handouts as they are going to complete them in. I only do it 24 hours in advance because if you send it a lot before that, then they read through, they try and work out what your content might be, and they might decide sort of they don't need to come because they've gone through all of your handouts. But any later than that, they might not be passed on by the organizer or convener, or they might not have time to print them out and ready. So I think 24 hours is pretty good time frame. Number 3 is test. You want to test that your sound is working. You want to test that your mic is working. You need to jump on well before and go through, do a test, see what your lighting's like, see everything. I'm talking about here when you would use a service such as Zoom. I say Zoom, but that's because I'm most familiar with Zoom. You could use GoToWebinar, or you could use any of the platforms that are becoming so popular now. Test, make sure that you're recording it, make sure you're playing it back, looking at it, seeing was the sound great, knowing exactly which headset you used with the microphone and what settings it was on, so that you can do that each time and you get really comfortable and confident. Otherwise you're feeling anxious that you're hoping it's working okay. Number 4, have a clear whiffham. Now, a whiffham is what's in it for me. You want to have a clear whiffham for the session. What are you teaching in this training session that you are doing virtually? And you need to have the strong whiffham right at the beginning. Just as in live training, you have a what's in it for me session so that they want to pay attention and listen to you. So the one I used here for you earlier was save you from looking like a silly goose. None of us want to look like a silly goose. So if you know these 12 points, you're not going to look like a silly goose and you are going to look professional. And of course, we all want to come across as that. So think about, for the topic that you are teaching, what is in it for them to learn it, and make a really clear statement on that. Now, the second part of that is set the whiffham and clear protocol. Now, for protocol, I mean things like tell them how it's going to go. Tell them what the situation is going to be. Some people might not be used to online and virtual training. And so you want to say when they can ask questions, how to use the chat box. You want to give them a practice in the chat box early on. So you're asking things like, let me know where you're dialing in from, or what's the weather like where you are, so they get a chance to practice finding where their chat box is, and things like that. And breaks. When are we going to have breaks? For virtual training, you need to give them breaks way more than for live training. So even if you're doing a 2-hour session virtually, after that first hour, great to give them a comfort break, let them stand, let them stretch, let them grab another water, whatever it might be. Okay, number 5 is short, sharp intros. I remember the days, oh my goodness, years ago when webinars were first a big thing. People were abominable about their long, drawn-out intros. They would yak on and on and on for 15 or 20 minutes about themselves or their credibility or whatever it might be before they got into what they were actually talking about. And it drove me mad because, yes, I want to know a little bit about their credibility, but I'm here for the topic of the webinar, of the virtual training. I want to get into what you're teaching me. And so don't go on and on and on about boring stuff and, you know, regurgitating stuff that has nothing to do with anything. Get into the topic that you're here to speak about. And I got to the point where people were so bad, I knew the notorious ones, I would literally log on 10 or 15 minutes later, knowing that they wouldn't have covered anything yet. Please, not professional, particularly when you're being paid to do it. Not a great idea. So a short, sharp intro. We do need to know who you are and what your credit is and to hear your passion and your expertise, and then get straight in. And it needs to be about the whiffham. It needs to be about what I am going to be able to do as a result of your content. Okay, good stuff. Number 6, give clear instructions. I am always going on about how important this is when you are on live training. Clear instructions. Don't say things like, oh, just find a partner and. Far better and far more comfortable for people if you're saying, you two pair up, you two pair up, you two pair up. And I mean the same by giving clear instructions when it's virtual. Don't say, well, just think about that, and then people aren't going to be sure whether they really should think about that, or are they to write it down, or are they to whatever. Give very clear instructions of, we're now going to go into a breakout room. How a breakout room is going to work is, this is what I want you to do. It's going to prompt you to accept the breakout room. Please press this, and then. So you're really setting them, the task, and they're very clear, because as I said before, virtual could be new to them, and you never know if they're going to feel comfortable. And it's so important for us as trainers that the delegates are comfortable and happy and keen to learn, because that's what we're here for. So those were the first 6. Engineer your background, skeleton handouts, test, give a clear whiffham and set protocol, short, sharp intros, and give clear instructions. And what leads into that beautifully is number 7, which is give exact timings for activities. Particularly if you're going to use breakout rooms, which is great because it makes it as close to live training as we can if you put people into breakout rooms. And exact activities, tell them how long it's going to take. So if you are saying, I'm going to put you in groups of 4 and I'm going to let you speak about it for 5 minutes, and then I want you to come back and give your key answers for that. In Zoom, when you're calling people back, it gives them a 60-second time frame to wrap up their discussion and come back into the main conference area. And it's a good idea, even with timings, to send them a message as the trainer into each of the breakout rooms and say, you're halfway, you've got 2 minutes left, please start thinking about who your spokesperson's going to be to recap. Things like that are cool. Okay. Number 8, engage often and use chat responses, use applause, because we want this to be engaging. We want this to be dynamic and really cool. So chat responses, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're going to tell them how to do the chat box, so that when you ask the first important question in the actual training, they're not going, oh my goodness, I'm panicking, I can't find where the chat box is. So get them to practice with something really easy at the beginning while you're going through the protocol, so that they know things like responses. And you can do responses a number of ways. You can do things like tell me in the chat box, but you can also do easy ways where you say, rated out of 10, how comfortable you already feel delivering virtual training. And then you'll get to see that some people hate it and are 0, and others are really familiar with it and are giving you a 10. So just tell them what the rating is. 10 means this, 0 means that, and they'll follow on. But fun things like thumbs up. Even if you finish a session at one point, you could go, right, thumbs up if you agree, thumbs down if you're unclear. Is anyone not clear? Did that make sense? Things like that. And applause is always a fun one, that they can clap or clap everyone else. When someone's a spokesperson and they give their feedback, then you can give that nice warm recognition to them. Number 9, move between headshots and slides and split screen when you're doing virtual training, and that really mixes it up nicely. So headshot is like you're seeing here of me now, the head and shoulder talking, and I personally quite like that at the beginning, where you're introducing yourself, you're giving a little bit of a cred, you're giving the whiffham, is quite nice when it's you connecting with the group very personally. Then you might get into the content and you're showing your PowerPoint slides, and you're showing the slides come up, and you may go just to PowerPoint if you want them just to focus on the slides, or you can do a split screen, which is the PowerPoint with the talking head in the corner and they can see both. Now, I think to mix it up, particularly if you're doing virtual training for a long time, it's fine to do just one or the other if you're going for 10 or 20 minutes, whatever. But if you're doing fairly long, I would use it as a different medium and do some that are just PowerPoint slides, some that are just you. Say you've got a gorgeous story or something, a case study to explain, then you might be great to bring it back to the head and shoulders, and you're talking and telling the story. We don't need slides for that. So I'd really want you to mix it up instead of going, okay, for the whole thing we've got a slide and we've got a talking head in the corner and we're going to do the whole 3 hours like that. Would be deadly. Okay, leads on to that really nicely, and this is a more advanced session that I want to do here, is number 10 is use state changes. Now, state changes are what advanced trainers use that really show professionalism, because we all change our state naturally, unconsciously, every 7 minutes. And there are 3 main parts of the states that we change. So physical, mental, and emotional. So when you move yourself in the chair and cross one leg over the other, or cross your arms in a different way, you've just done a state change that is physical, physically moving your body, because we don't sit dead still for the whole time. You can also have mental state changes where you go, ooh, I wonder what that would mean for me. Oh, that would be amazing. Wonder what I could do with that. You're mentally thinking through the training. And emotional state changes, and when you go, so say you daydream off a bit, and maybe the person's going off about something you're not finding very interesting. You think, I wonder what my kids are doing right now, or I wonder if they've done that, and you're having a bit of an emotional, and then you come back into the room. Now, this is all perfectly natural, and we're human beings, of course. So the advanced bit here is for trainers to make it happen rather than letting it happen normally with their delegates. So engineer physical, emotional, and mental state changes for your group. So you're thinking a physical state change would be, definitely the break after an hour, stand up, go and get a water, roll your shoulders, give them a few exercises that they might want to do in their break, things like that, so that they've had a proper physical state change. Because in virtual training, there's so much less than that. In physical training, live training, we can get them up to a board, we can get them up to, flip chart paper on walls, things like that. We're using these activities, whereas seated virtually, you've got to be quite careful with remote training. Mental state changes. Get them to actually think what it would be like for them, get them to do working out of some description rather than passively giving them the answer. Say, so if you're able to train, and charge $3,500 a day, and you're doing 10 days in a month, then that's $35,000. You're getting them to actually work out the 35, not saying it as I just did. And the beauty about that is you're then moving into the emotional, because if you pause and think, now for most people, $35,000 in a month is beyond fabulous and beyond recognizing. I mean, when I first started training, I was freelancing and running my own training business and working really, really hard. In my 20s, I was going gung-ho at it, and I was desperate to make £7,000. I was living in London at the time, and for me to break the £7,000 mark at that stage would have been great. And sometimes I came close and sometimes I wasn't, but I really wanted, and my mindset was set at £7,000. And then, of course, when I was able to do 7, it was huge and a wonderful celebration. And then I set the next one. For some reason, I set 10,000, and I thought, now I can do £10,000, and I worked towards that. And then something that helped my mindset a little bit when I moved to Australia is the rate from pounds to Australian doubled. So eventually I was like, oh great, that helped my mindset, because now it's just 20,000 a month. And I got going in business here, and then I hit my first 30,000, and so on and so on and so on. And I had little rewards for each time I did. And so if you allow people to have that emotional state change of not just thinking here, but thinking here, how would it feel? And it is possible. You've simply got to believe that it's possible. And for some people who are miles away from that, they shun it and think, no, it's not possible. You can't do it. But it absolutely is, and far higher than that too. So that's talking about physical, emotional, and mental state changes. Number 11, have some animations if your internet has the capacity to handle it. Animations are going to help with that interactivity and the attention. So if you have a cute little relevant slide and it's got movement on the slide, or something jumping into something and it's showing whatever you're teaching, then have that. But if you think your internet is going to not be great, be careful of that, because you don't want it to be lagging. So make sure you're plugging in instead of having Wi-Fi. It's better to have a plugged in internet, because it tends to be far more stable than Wi-Fi, unless you've got amazing Wi-Fi somewhere in the world. With this, just as with normal training, make sure you're bringing in your topics one at a time, your lines one at a time on the slide. Don't have all of them come up at once, because of course everyone is reading the rest of the slide. And I've just spent a few hours on a virtual summit this morning, and I was an attendee rather than a speaker, because I love to learn and see how people are doing it and what they're doing right and things like that. And I noticed that two of the mistakes that they were making, and these are very highly paid professional speakers making these mistakes, so this is what I mean. They weren't bringing in the topics one at a one, and they were bringing big tables in, and then they were talking through each line of the table. And of course, we were just taking a photo or a screenshot of it and then going, do, I've got that, I've read it through, I know it. Whereas the other thing that, if you're controlling what they're seeing as an animation each time, custom animation that's coming in, you're speaking about that, and they're staying with you because they want to know what's the next point and what's the next point. So I call that split concentrations, where you have one thing come up and you're talking about something else. They're split because they're not listening to you, and they're not listening to they're not reading the slide. So make sure your slide and what you're saying are all incongruent the whole time. Okay, good. And the second thing that they were making a mistake on when I was watching is they were clicking before they were talking about the topic. So it's almost like the segue was coming in too soon, and they were clicking to the next slide, which had too much of the information, and then they were setting the scene and saying, this is another important point, which is, and then we had been looking at the slide for 60 seconds before they actually got to the topic. So it's far better to use your B blank out the slide if you want to, or even stay on the old slide which you've already completed, and then move on and set the scene and why it's important, and then move on to the next particular point. Okay, so that's real professionalism that's going to be fantastic and smooth. All right. And number 12, the last of the list, is pause the recording during breaks. And I say that because virtual training can go for half day, say it's 3 hours, whatever it is. When you've got breaks, it's going to be a lot harder to edit afterwards and chop out the bits. So simply remember to pause the recording and unpause it so that you've got it beautifully edited. Otherwise, you're going for if you're over a lunch break or something, it could be a half-hour break that you've left it recording, which is not great. So practical tip there. And a note to say that if you're using any of the platforms, then they take a while to buffer at the end. So make sure you've built in time for it to sit there for, depending on how long it is, if it's an hour and a half of recording, it can buffer for a good half an hour, if not more. And so you don't want to be closing down your laptop and taking it off places, because I'm always paranoid. I want that recording to be there after all of my hard work. I want to make sure that I've got a great recording that we can use for afterwards. So make sure you've got that time and that it's plugged in and that your computer or laptop is not going to die while it's buffering after you've done the virtual training. But that's a very practical point. So we covered 1 to 6 and I recapped earlier. Number 7 was give exact timings for activities. Number 8 was engage often with chat responses, thumbs up and applauses. 9 was move between the headshot, the screen and the split screen of both of you. 10 was use state changes. 11 was have animations if your internet can handle it. And 12 was pause the recording during breaks. Okay, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please tell me any of those that are your favorite. Write them down. Please tell me if you agree particularly or disagree with any. Then I'd love to hear from you and have a discussion around your thoughts and any that you think I've missed. So if there's anything that could be over the 12, I'd love to learn as well, as this is something we're all going to have to be so masterful with, and we want to get better and better and better so that we're smooth like anything with it. Okay, if you found this useful, please give me a like and share. I'd love you to send it to other people who are also in this world of change, who are going to need to do virtual training sessions as well. Please let them know these things so that they can come across as professional as well. Email us if you would like the sheet that I have of the 12 key points so that you can write in your own points as well. And the next live I'm going to be doing next week is going to be on the state of the market now at the moment for virtual training. What topics are hot and heavy, what's going to work, what's not going to work, what works better as virtual training, and what just fails as virtual training, if not done exceedingly well. I'm going to give you the real practicalities of the world this week and training and how we can pivot very successfully into virtual and online, remote and live stream training, which is pretty exciting, and I'm choosing to see it that way. So thank you so much to those of you who were live with me. I really appreciate your participation, and I look forward to reading your comments. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.